Welcome to Villa Heights Baptist Church Evening Devotions. The title tonight is, Get Behind Me, Satan. This comes from Matthew chapter 16, and we're going to start reading in verse 21 tonight. And Jesus is addressing His disciples, and He's describing to them what soon must take place. Take a look at verse 21. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to His disciples that He must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that He must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Well, Peter took Him aside and began to rebuke Him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. For you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but the concerns of men." Then Jesus said to all of His disciples, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me shall save it." And so here we see the great stumbling block that Peter was right then and there, that Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." Jesus has a mission to fulfill, and who's in his way? Peter, the eminent apostle. Now, he learned his lesson, and we'll see about that so that we can learn. But folks, I believe today there's strands of Christianity that are setting themselves up in opposition to the work of God and His kingdom in this world. And Jesus would say that to them. So we need to be very careful. Just like Peter, who had followed Jesus for 3 years, needed to learn. And he did at the very end, thankfully, so that we can beware. Now, Jesus says to him, "Get behind me, Satan." Why? Because Peter had in mind not the things of God, but the things of men. You see, we all like to sit on our throne of self-interest, and Peter couldn't see any way in the world that anything good could come from suffering. You see, Jesus had just said He was going to be suffering at the hands of evil men and then be crucified. And Peter just saw this as a defeat. And so Jesus is wanting us to know that God uses suffering in this world so that when we take up our cross and willingly choose to obey God by letting self go, by surrendering our interests and our own understanding and trust in the Lord, take up our cross, follow Him in obedience, then God has a plan that we will fulfill in this world, that will not have a stumbling block in its way, that we shall go in the will of God to see His redemptive purpose accomplished in my life, in our life. So you see, Jesus describes His suffering and death, and then Peter describes what a stumbling block this would be and came in opposition to it. And then Jesus describes, even if you come after me, you must also take up your own cross. Because you see, we'll be conformed to the image and the likeness of Jesus. Because all of His teachings of the redemptive plan of Jesus and teachings to love all emanate from the self-giving, self-loving,